Ladies and gentlemen, and aviation aficionados, welcome back to another episode of the Bagfather. Today, we're taking off to India, where a brand new aviation hub is taking shape. That's right, we're talking about the new Noida International Airport, a game changer for air travel in the region. And who better to guide us through it than the man at the helm, the one making it all happen. He's the VP of this exciting new gateway, a leader in the aviation space, and someone with a passion for seamless passenger journeys. Please welcome Jan Wicki to the Bagfather.
Thank you so much.
Warm welcome to another episode of the Bagfather. And it's a coincidence. Last week I had a meeting with the Indian ambassador in the Netherlands. Of course, the topic was aviation. And he was proudly telling me how many airports are opening in India and at what pace. So I live close to an airport which is newly built but hasn't been open for the last 10 years. So tell me, how is this going in India?
What you say is true. In the end, it's crazy what happens here. It puts us also in a lot of challenges. As whoever you interact with from an authority side, they have at least opened 5 airports in the parts of their career. So they have a lot of experience in this, and I think they do it in a crazy pace.
It's true. The ambassador told me that they are planning so quickly ahead that technically you can deduct it to almost one airport every 15 days. I found that a little bit hard to believe. They are opening up like retail stores. They do it like boom, 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 boom. And there they go. Is the demand so big that it's necessary, Jan?
Demand is definitely growing very fast. I think at the moment, mainly only 3 or 4% of the Indian population is able to use air travel.
Wow.
But even if we say we would increase this by another 2 or 3%, if we look at the population in India, what this would mean in absolute number is incredible. And I think it's very hard for the infrastructure to keep up that pace of the growth. One other example which I can give you, if you look at the airlines which are there, the amount of aircraft they have on order, I think is beating everything else which is there in the world at the moment. So if this really then is all delivered, there is capacity required in all the places all over India.
It's all Boeing, Airbus, or what are they ordering?
It's pretty much Boeing and Airbus, yes. So I think they are very well in keeping everyone happy. At the moment, no Indian development in terms of aircraft, but I think both the parties, they're also investing in getting their factories here so that some part of the work can happen actually here locally.
And the ambassador told me that a lot of new technology is also implemented on the airports because you can start from scratch. I think you have to talk us through your endeavor as far with Noida Airport and how you approached it, because it's a concession from Zurich Airport, I believe. So talk us through it.
So we're now about in the 5th year of our project, in fact. So this is a concession which was awarded to us end of 2019 as part of a DFBOT concession for 40 years. So it's our job to design, finance, build this airport and then operate it. For those who don't know this, it's a pure greenfield project. So we have basically had the opportunity to plan on a white sheet of paper. And the airport is built in the National Capital Region, which basically means it's the second airport for New Delhi. And we are talking, again, to come back more into what you said before, we're talking about a population here just in the city, in the immediate surroundings of more than 25 million. And if you compare it to cities alike, then usually there are like 2, 3, if not 4 airports in comparable metropolitan areas. So there's a huge demand for that. Now in the project, I think we are started the trial phase. So we are coming closer to the opening of the airport. We have done our validation flight, which was the first landing of an aircraft at this airport in last December, which was quite emotional to see how a few years back only there was like grass and agricultural land. You can actually have an aircraft coming in. So time being, we have published our AIP. So I think next 2 to 3 months, we should be ready for the first flight operations on the cargo side.
How long have you guys been planning, and what year did you start planning for the airport?
So after the concession award, which was end of 2019, we have initiated our master planning exercise in 2020. So what actually happened is that we had just initiated our international design competition for the terminal design when everyone was sent to home office. So it's probably one of the very few airports worldwide which was just planned from home. Actually, what's happening was that like even in the design competition, in travel was not possible. So we were not able to meet the architects in person. It was all via video calls. And in Zurich was still possible for a while to go into office. So I remember that the presentation of the different architect teams on their competition submissions, we kind of arranged like a small TV studio in our office with a camera. So to host this whole award of the competition. So this whole thing was just done remote. And I think the first time that we could meet our architects and colleagues all in person was like more than a year later at PTE, which was a very special experience.
So I see that there's a lot of technology and innovation that's being integrated into the new airport. What did that look like during the planning stages? Obviously, when technology is moving so quickly, how do you plan appropriately and scale to meet the needs?
So what we tried from the beginning is to bring in some specific principle into the design of the terminal. As you mentioned before, I think the convenience of the passengers, but not only passengers, actually of everyone using the airport was very important to us, like be it people who are flying, but also people who work at the airport or people just come for visit to meet and greet. So we use technology wherever it will help us. And one of the principles which we agreed quite soon was that we would design our passenger journey along of the use of smartphone as the passenger's prime device. Because our approach was that this is actually a device which everyone knows best. No, I mean, you can create the best GUI, but then it might still be that people struggle to use it. So, for example, if we talk about the self-backdrops and the automation which we brought in, then we felt that it's very important that people can use this automation using their own device. So like using a QR code, you could remote control the self-backdrop from your own smartphone, because this is what people are used to. And we have automated like 50% of our check-in infrastructure is using self-backdrop in a common use way that we say, actually all the airlines which enroll for it or opt for the program, there should not be dedicated self-backdrop, but it should be a common use zone, which also helps us to flatten the peaks and to bring in more availability to the passengers. They're not reliant on check-in opening times, whether the counter is manned or not, because they're just there 24 hours. And then at the same time, what was a very interesting development which happened in India was the launch of the DG Yatra program, which is a biometric travelers program where you can do the domestic flights for now. And I think it's going to be extended on international flights also, just using your face as a token, which I think is something which, yes, biometric programs exist, but that it has been rolled out countrywide as one program is quite unique still. And I have used it myself, and it's really helpful. And it helps you to cut the process time. It reduces the amount of paper transactions. And we're probably one of the first airports now in India who have been able to design from the beginning for this program. So meaning that all our passenger touchpoints from the terminal entry, which in India is also special that there's an ID check before you can enter the terminal building, which is actually another, let's say, restriction in the process, another restriction making the passenger journey seamless. So from there over the check-in counter, the boarding pass check to the boarding gate, we have all enabled for the Yatra that people can use it with their biometric tokens.
And it's the benefit of starting from scratch, yeah? And you can implement all the technology that many airports dream of. Talk me through the numbers a little bit. How much passengers do you anticipate on in the next period of time?
So at the moment we're building a capacity of 12 million annual passengers, and the concession agreement thus obliges to extend the airport in 4 phases. So whenever there is a trigger hit of 80% of capacity, then we basically will kickstart the next expansion phase. So this will increase to 30 million in phase 2 and then to 50 and 70 million in phase 3 and 4 respectively. So as a comparison, the existing running airport in Delhi at the moment has already more than 80 million passengers per year. So we'll kind of start as the Newark or the Gatwick of Delhi as kind of additional airport, additional capacity. But if we look at the growth and the demand which is there in the country, then it's probably rather that we speak about the third airport in Delhi soon as well.
Okay. And if you start from scratch, I'm assuming that you take, and also knowing Zurich Airport a little bit, sustainability initiatives pretty seriously. And how did you guys do this when you start from scratch in India?
You're right. It's one of our key pillars as part of our strategy also. So while in Zurich, we have committed to reach net zero, I think, in the next 10 years. In this project, as we had the option really to start now with the design, we committed to achieve net zero by 2030. And our plan is to reach this on one hand by the implementation of several passive design measures in the terminal building and in the other buildings, like with certain times like natural cooling will be possible by use of a courtyard to cool down the area. We have an on-site solar farm installation happening and a power purchase agreement also of sourcing wind energy from sustainable power production in India. And so we will find out once we are live, but we plan that more than 50% of the energy requirement we can source from renewable sources. Then there's also other measures, like we say on the air side, we only want like electric vehicles, which is a guidance to the ground handling agents, to the airlines on what vehicles they're allowed to use. There are measures on the water side also with the reuse of rainwater and overall like also achieving a green campus certification under the IGBC rating. There are many different measures which are planned there. And as you said, like it's part of our DNA that we want to have not only a modern airport in terms of technology, but also in terms of sustainability.
Did you look at the systems inside of the building as a part of your sustainability, or is it more the building envelope?
No, it's also the systems, and it's also making the link to the technology and making the link to data, right? And especially connecting data points that we say, if we know in certain areas of the terminal building there are less flights or maybe no more flights planned on these gates for a certain time of the day, that we can save on the consumption also in terms of the lighting, in terms of the cooling required in certain areas. So what we looked into is which data points we can generate and which we can link and create additional value by this in terms of the sustainability measures.
Just out of curiosity, because you're talking to the Bagfather, what kind of tools did you buy inside? What kind of toys to move a bag from A to B and load it into the aircraft? Because that's the most important question.
So maybe to disappoint you a bit, what was initially the plan was just a very conventional tilt tray sorter, which we had planned in our initial design with a 5-level inline screening. This was a double-stack tilt tray sorter on 2 levels to achieve the capacity and the redundancy which we had calculated in our design. So what then happened was that during the design stage, there was explorations done on reducing the footprint of the overall building. And as mentioned before, actually, we were designing this whole airport during pandemics. And one of the side effects of it was that commodity prices have risen to an all-time high, right? So actually, if you would want to choose the worst point in time to design and build an airport, then it's probably the one which we have chosen. So there was a lot of pressure from that side. And while we did these explorations, there was the proposal to change the BHS actually to a destination coded tray system for also achieving more space efficiency. And what was the result in the end is that the footprint of the terminal building was not reduced. So we stick to the original size, but we kept the DCT. So what we have now installed is a destination coded tray system. And as one of the additional benefits based on that, we do not need the double-stacked sorters anymore. We could actually reduce part of the basement, which on the end was also like a cost saving, which we benefited from in addition to the benefits of the technology of the DC.
Which supplier did you use for your system?
This is being installed by Siemens.
Pure out of curiosity, you're anticipating on a very large operation in the next couple of years. What were the implications for the baggage system then? Because it's a big difference if you anticipate on 12 million or on 70 million in the third phase. So did you construct it in a way that is more easy to increase capacity in the baggage handling system?
Yes, we did. As one of our principles also in the overall terminal design and not just for the baggage handling was that one of the pillars is the ease of phasing because we want to be flexible and modular in our design. So what we basically did is that we have first done a concept design for the 30 million airport or for the 30 million terminal. And then we have reduced it, or we have basically introduced the phasing based on the second phase, like how to develop the first phase in a way that we can easily expand it later, which as a consequence means also on the BHS side that we have a concept design for the 30 million BHS. And we have already in the installations now included these additional areas where we say, okay, we can, with the least effort afterwards, expand the BHS to add the additional capacity which will be required. Let's say like additional CT-EDS lines, and then also the expansion into the new building.
So aside from the system itself, what technology innovations were infused into the baggage system? Any kind of biometrics, AI, anything along those lines?
If you get the privilege to design an airport from scratch, is actually what everyone's dreaming about in the sector, no? And you have so many ideas which say, yeah, if I once get the chance, I will do this, that, and the other one as well. And then suddenly the budget kicks in. So then you again will have to restrict on what you can do. I think what is there now also is that we need to see on how this also works together with the passengers. So something which we were able to convince also the authorities is that we, for example, on the level 4 of the screening, we can go with remote reconciliation, which is something which I guess years ago was also not possible because you didn't have these opportunities of the remote conferences with cameras that you have like the screener actually sitting in another room. It's much more convenient for the passenger if he does not leave the security controlled area, but he can just go into a room inside the pier where he's living instead of just going over to a different part of the terminal building. And otherwise, I mean, with the DCT itself, the amount of tracking which is possible increases a lot. No, so we benefit in different aspects. One is like the reduced number of no-read, the better tracking, higher security. We hope also less baggage jams, which again will help us in the operational efficiency, and the higher speed, which will help us also in terms of the MCT, right? On connecting the passengers is fine, but then if the bag is lost on the way on the transfer, then his happiness might be affected as well.
Wow. It must be a dream to do this. You are currently living in India. You said that you were quite emotional when the first plane landed. It must be very emotional when the first bag goes through the whole system and it's loaded into the aircraft. When is that expected?
I was just about to say, I mean, first bags going on, maybe not first bag, but first trays going through the systems. This has already happened. So we are in the commissioning of the system. So we are, I think, now at level 3. Then it depends a bit on what will be the opening of the airport, which is scheduled for the domestic flights towards August this year. But we're in the phase of starting our ORADS trials. So I think the first bag being transported from the check-in counter to the makeup carousel to an aircraft will probably happen even earlier as part of the trials, which will be quite amazing to see as well.
For what I've learned about the airport, the business model was also around cargo, right?
There is a big potential for cargo bases, the geographical location of the airport, as there's an industrial belt just close to Noida, where we are based. There's a lot of production happening there, and at the moment all these goods are being basically trucked to the existing airport. So cargo was one of our pillars from the beginning in our business model. And I think, again, it links back to the fact that we had the opportunity to design from scratch. So it was not an afterthought, but it was integral part of the master planning exercise that we have allocated big part of our land for the cargo function as well. So what we try to create, along with our partner from Air India side, is a multimodal cargo hub on more than 90 acres, which kind of covers an integrated cargo terminal for domestic cargo, for international cargo. There's a courier terminal planned, facilities like cool ports, and there's a big warehousing zone also that like directly at the airport itself, the contributors can happen and consolidate the cargo, or there can be truck-to-truck transfer, etc. So it's integral part of our strategy, and accordingly also when we did the master plan, there's the campus for the, let's say, more the clean functions for the passengers, but then there's also the campus with a separate access for logistics functions, the cargo, the maintenance, the repair, the overhaul. And probably one benefit which we have is that there are big constraints in the existing airport in terms of the access, because of the road access for trucks is time-wise limited in Delhi. So the trucks can only come in during very limited hours of the day, and we don't fall under these restrictions, which will be helpful for us, but also then for all the cargo operators.
Once everything is opened, you need to share some pictures with us, because I have to give it to you. I've never been to India. I'm sorry for that. It's on my bucket list. But yeah, I think for our listeners, it might be wise to give them an impression how a newly built airport works. A little bit of a behind the scenes. I think we can share that on social media, right?
We can do that for sure, yeah. And I think you have one step ahead of me, because before this project, India was not even on my bucket list. I have to be very honest. But now, having been living here for 4 years, I did never regret to come here. And yeah, if you're part of this industry, it's, I would say, quite a privilege, because if you're in Europe, there are not that many greenfield airports anymore happening. And if I look even at our headquarters in Zurich, we take like 20 years to extend the runway by 300 meters, while here we put up a full airport within 5 years only.
So in terms of technology, you're also responsible for ORAP activities, is that correct?
That's right, yes.
Now that technology has taken center stage in so much of what we're doing in aviation, how has that changed how you are training the owner for the eventual turnover of a system?
In the end, what we did is we started the ORAP program already 2 years ago, I think, which was one of the main contributors that we can achieve this. I mean, it is a new airport, but it's also a new company, which we founded, which meant we have hired a lot of experts from all over India. And they have all their expertise, but they never work together. And at the same time, we also had to design all our processes from scratch, right? So every single SOP had to be defined from scratch on how to make this work. What we use, therefore, in terms of technology is a web-based platform, which is kind of an online library, where we have defined all our processes, or designed also the processes. And what is quite cool is that you define it as a flow chart, but automatically it's being converted into a step-by-step tutorial. So meaning, if you do the training with people at the front, they do not really need to be able to understand the flowchart, because the tool itself does convert it for them in okay, you did this step, then you have to take this decision based on the flowchart. It will say, okay, if you take yes, it will go this as the next step, or if it's no, this is the next step. So technology helps a lot in providing the training, also in terms of the new processes to the different stakeholders in that terms.
Hey, and out of curiosity, because if you start from scratch, how did you involve your clients, basically, the airlines, ground handling parties? How did you involve them?
From the beginning, in fact, like in the master planning stage, we took their inputs also. During the design stage, we had on a regular basis, we had workshop with them, because we wanted to understand what are their learnings, like what are the mistakes we should not repeat again, or what are the things they would propose as improvements from other airports. As mentioned before, in the end, it's not just about the passengers, it's about the staff and the ease of their processes. So we had involved the major airlines here during the design stage, and even now in the ORAT phase, like there's the regular interactions we have with them. Does not mean that we need to absolutely do 100% of everything they propose, but I think it was very helpful. No, it's not just about the airlines maybe and the clients. I think it's as important that you align with the authorities, which are the major stakeholders as well, which also actually was one of the critical topics in terms of designing the baggage handling. Maybe less about ensuring the compliance with the international standards, which was more or less straightforward. But the bigger challenge was like to comply with the local standards, which are actually more restrictive than the international ones. So one example I can give you is that, for example, there's an obligation to install the CT-EDS for the level 1 of the screening. However, they do not allow a machine-taken decision, which means regardless of the CT, 100% of the bags go into level 2A. So the amount of screening which is required because of that is just like incredibly high. And then like they insist on like the full distance of the tray system for all the 30 seconds for screening 2A, 110 seconds for 2B. They do not accept any averages. So it's very space intensive in the end on what we had to design, which created a lot of constraint, and where probably in the end the DCT helped us to achieve the same.
This is interesting because this is unique for India. I see loosening this regulation in other big domestic markets to make it more cost efficient, actually, because this has an impact on the operation, not only in time, but also in money.
It definitely has, yeah. I think compared to other countries, labor in India is comparably still cheap. So while on baggage handling, I think on the system side, there is already a lot of automation. the labor intensive part, there's not that much incentive to automate further. Like if we talk about, let's say, robots for loading of carts or robots for loading of ULDs, the business case is already difficult in Western countries. And then if you operate in countries where labor cost is so low, I think the incentive is very low. And therefore, probably in the end, it needs to come rather from maybe considering the health of the employees rather than further optimization.
Yeah, I was just going to ask, some of the things that we're up against here in the United States when there's new terminals or just modifications happening, new systems going in, but they're all disparate systems. So the data sharing portion of that, never mind the fight between airlines and airports, but just delivering information to a central point so that the appropriate people have dashboards that relate to what they really need to see all day. Is that something that you guys have incorporated and been able to have certain KPIs showing up for specific people?
It's what we have planned, yes. I would say we have not yet completed the incorporation of the same. But our approach is that there is one common data lake, and we also understand that data should be shared for free. Because in the end, it's the overall system which benefits. So we do not have like any intent to monetize the data between the stakeholders, but rather it should be a give and take to optimize the overall airport operations. So we provide the platform for the same. And then we are currently working with the different partners like the airlines, the ground handlers, like the cargo terminal, for example, on integrating the data feed so that overall at the end, we can create these dashboards, which you mentioned, and that we create one single source of truth, right? Nothing worse than having two different numbers for the same KPI or even a different understanding of what the KPI actually means. This is one of the big exercises we go through at the moment as well. Starting with very simple things, like if we talk number of passengers. So what exactly is a passengers? Do we count children? Do we count the staff who is traveling on ID tickets? So all these kind of things is topics which you do not have first in your mind if you design a new airport, but it boils down to these discussions as well. I think in the end, we can provide the platform, but we need to rely on data which is correct and which is same for everyone. So therefore, I think it's very important that we follow this path and continue this implementation. And I have to say that the feedback from our partners is very positive on this approach. So it's not that like there's, at least for now, let's see how it goes once we start the operations and we start claiming delays, etc. Whether they're still so willing to share like they are right now. But I think overall the commitment is there.
Must be an exciting time to work towards this opening of the airport. I'm quite curious. Do you already made some experiences that you will bring back when you go back to Zurich Airport? Because Zurich Airport is there for a long time. They thought they did it all right, and then you start from scratch. How did you learn from that, and what are key learnings that you will bring back to Switzerland?
One of the key learnings which I did while I have been living here is that there is probably no country I've been in where people were so creative in finding alternative solutions how to achieve something. This might be a bit of contradiction to what I said before, like if we talk again about baggage handling, and this definitely in a country like India is a very labor-intensive market, which might even mislead you to the conclusion that this is not where innovation happened because it's all with labor, there's no automation and there's no digitization. But if you then go back to the fact that they're so creative in finding solutions to problems, I think one of the learnings is that there's always different ways how to achieve something. And bringing this back to Zurich, where sometimes, the mindset is this is the only way which is correct and this is the only way which works. I think this will help in a mindset change also.
Now, it's funny, we share the same experience. I have the privilege to work with an incredible, talented group of Indian people as well. That was one of the reasons I met the ambassador last week. And I find the culture in itself, it's a can-do culture. So let's go for the solution instead of seeing the problem over time. And that makes it surprisingly that they have such high restrictions in the country when it comes to security and secondary screening and how everything is done. So very interesting to see how that works on the scale that you are working on.
I think in general, maybe now security screening is the wrong example because it's quite rigid. But otherwise, I think this helps actually also in circumvent the regulations, which is there to find a solution around or a way around that and to achieve the same result.
Yeah, I get it.
So one of the things we haven't talked about yet is robotics. Have you guys incorporated anything in the new design?
They have enough people to work there. Yes.
This is really the point, yeah. At the moment, no, we have not. We have explored the same, but I think coming back to the other point, right? I think robotics still is a costly item. And if you compare it to what is the cost of labor here, at the end, also what is there in India, there's like the authority which is there to define the tariffs on a quite stringent rule set on how much you are allowed to make out of your investments. And they are quite strict in scrutinizing your investments. Therefore, we are a bit not reluctant, but we first need to get the tariffs now for the overall investment of this first phase. And then every other investment, again, which goes on your CapEx will be scrutinized by that. And if you compare it to the labor cost, then even the airlines, which in fact in India on the domestic side do self-handling, so they're not obliged to work with a ground handler, but they have their own ground handling divisions within the airlines. They're actually not willing to pay for that. So while we are very open to innovation and to also probably to pilots along these lines, it will take a bit, I think, to be adopted as long as the labor cost is so cheap.
Full automation of the process is going hand in hand with labor costs. But there is also this thing of being accurate and making it easy for the people to work. Work smart. That's the whole thing. And I can also imagine, by the way, Jan, that your role is being watched as a secondary airport of Delhi. Your role is probably you're setting a new tone or a new vibe in India. Are they using you as an example? Tell me a little bit more about that.
We have this benefit that we have no legacy in that sense, and we can define the processes more seamless, and we can cut process step. We can make use of the technology to achieve the same. And this is also where we have involved the airlines, right? Seeing where can the SOPs be optimized compared to what is done now, so that in the end also the passengers will benefit from the same. And also design wise, I think there are things which we brought in which are not there yet, and which we copied also from Zurich, for example, or from other airports in Europe, like that we can say we can use a contact stand without towing the aircraft away for both domestic and international flights, even on a mixed rotation basis, that we say the aircraft has an inbound on domestic and then the same aircraft can leave on an international route without having to be located to a different parking position somewhere else at the airport, which again reduces the effort on the airline side. This is something which we brought in new, for example, and which I think will also be something which is a showcase and which will be a role model which will be sooner or later copied by other new airports here.
Do you see the market itself being very different than European market? Also, when we talk about passenger behavior, the things they bring, we have spoken to airlines, they bring complete engine parts to the baggage handling systems or odd-size baggage. As first-time travelers, they might anticipate on a different journey than we are used to worldwide. Can you say something about that, how people are preparing and traveling?
It's an advantage on one hand. Maybe it's also seen as a risk in first instance. Definitely there is a huge number of first-time travelers who have not experienced the airport ecosystem before, and they do not know by heart what is the process, how to travel through a terminal. But I think it gives a lot of opportunities also, because if we look back on how the passenger journey has developed, coming from a time where you had to call the airline the day before to confirm that you're actually flying, you had your paper tickets, you went to the check-in counters and so on. So we can skip all of this. So it's not that we need to train these first-time travelers, so to say, on the conventional process, but we can directly onboard them on the automated technology. And it will probably be adopted even faster because there is no legacy in terms of they're used to that. So if this is the way how they're being introduced to the airport, I think, yes, this needs assistance, but this is required anyway if you look at first-time travelers. And then if we link it to our part of the digital strategy that we say we make use of the smartphone as the prime device, because even if they travel for the first time, they for sure know how to use their own phone. So we can bring this together. And in the end, I think the impact of the first-time travelers will be much less than maybe it looks at as first instance.
I personally think that it will be very tech savvy, and it's another generation that will be exploring the world and will be exploring India. So pretty much looking forward to your first experiences over there. Hey, do you have any advice for airport operators worldwide on how to start something like this? Because there are many in your position in different parts of the world. What's your advice when it comes to baggage efficiency, passenger experience, when you start an airport from scratch?
baggage, or let's say especially mishandled baggage, has huge potential to put a damage on the passenger experience. So you can have the nicest looking terminal and a super passenger experience, but if the baggage process is not looked at, then it can spoil the whole thing. So I think the advice is, even if you start on the greenfield, to acknowledge that the baggage processes deserve at least the same attention as other parts of the passenger journey in the planning, and that these processes are very important at the same time.
It sounds very logical and it sounds like a no-brainer. I think our listeners understand that this is not a given.
Yeah, baggage isn't a problem until it's lost, right?
Or piled up in the airport terminal.
Yeah.
Luckily, Jan has a cargo facility close by.
Yeah.
So he can pile up all the bags if something went wrong. But he has a reliable system. But again, with 80 million bags or at least passengers in the near future, it will be a complex operation. And it might take 10, 15, 20 years to get there. But that kind of volume is pretty easy for a country like India to be reached. The people are there. Economic prosperity is there. So essentially, I think it will go quickly that Jan will meet his capacity standards. I think he will be challenged or at least face similar problems that the bigger airports around the world as well. And that doesn't mean that operation from scratch is wrong, but it's just growing pains. That's what it is.
Thank you. It was a pleasure to be here.
Thank you very much, Jan. Very, very interesting what you're doing. Are you planning to stay there for a while?
We're currently discussing. I can definitely imagine to stay a bit longer in India. I think it's a very enriching experience culturally and, of course, professionally in setting up a new airport.
You have a pretty interesting resume if this first baggage is going through the system in volume. I'm pretty keen on seeing it in person.
Yeah, we'll have to do another interview about a year from today and understand how everything got off the ground.
You can come for the visit and we do it physically.
I think that sounds great.
That would be awesome. I would like to thank you for participating in the Bagfather. I have many other questions for you, but of course we are quite limited in our time. So thank you.
Yeah.
What a fascinating insight into the future of aviation in India. A huge thanks to Jan Wicki for giving us a sneak peek into the new Noida International Airport and how it's set to transform travel in India. From cutting-edge baggage handling systems to a vision of efficiency and sustainability, this is an airport to watch. If you enjoyed this episode, don't forget to subscribe, share, and of course, follow the Bagfather for more behind-the-scenes conversations from the world of baggage, airports, and travel tech. Until next time, safe travels and happy bagging.
And don't forget to get in touch. Go to our website and tell us about your baggage-related experiences and mishaps. In the meantime, thank you for listening and join us next time for more baggage-related conversations with the Bagfather. This is a Fresh Air production brought to you by Baggage Media.